live by members of the press and public today. Therefore, may I welcome anyone that may be watching remotely. A recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's webcasting and YouTube channels after the meeting has concluded, should anyone wish to view it. To confirm, as a Council, we welcome the use of Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm that I have not received any notifications or requests to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind members to refrain from using the chat facility and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when they wish to speak. Please, could you also keep your microphones muted when not talking, so there aren't any interruptions encountered. And moving on to the agenda, welcome Jade to your first meeting of education. Could Jade, our Democratic Services Officer, confirm if we have received any apologies?
Yep, thanks, Chair. So I have apologies from Councillor Price, Councillor Cowells and Victoria Haller.
Thank you very much, Jade. And it's remiss of me.
Chair?
Yes?
Chair, it's Janet. Councillor Tew has just emailed me to send his apologies. He's in work.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Chris Tew.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. It's a little bit remiss of me to miss out Geraint too, who's done a marvellous job on our pre-agenda, and it's his first time as the Democratic Services Officer for this committee, so we welcome Geraint as well. We will try not to inundate you with too much work. Thanks very much, Geraint. So moving on to the declarations of interest, which is agenda item 2, could I ask members in alphabetical order to state whether they have any declarations of interest to declare? Councillor Best?
I don't have any interest to declare. Other than that, I've got a cold, so if you see my camera going on, it's only because I'm sneezing or something.
Councillor Coles, Councillor Holden, not here. Councillor Jones?
I'm the Governor of Glenavon Heritage School, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Price, not here. I have to declare an interest. My son works at the SRS with the Gwent Police. Councillor Thomas?
Not at the moment, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Watkins?
I need to declare I've got a good friend that works at SRS.
Councillor Williams?
I'm a local authority governor at Fontnewwood Primary and at Woodlands Primary School.
Thank you. That takes us to the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of June 2023. Just to remind members, these minutes relate to the update reports we received on the progress and impact of accepted recommendations and the progress against adopted action plans. Please could I ask members to confirm that the minutes are accurate, an accurate account of the meeting, and if anyone is against or wishes to abstain, please can you confirm now? Can I ask if you're all in favour of the minutes, please? Thank you.
I wish to abstain because I was not present at the last meeting. I was on holidays, so I abstained from voting.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Takes us to agenda item 4, which is the action sheet. Please could members confirm if they have any questions or whether they are happy with the action sheet. Similarly, if anyone is against or wishes to abstain, please can they confirm now? Okay. Are you happy to carry those minutes? Thank you. They approved. The action sheet is noted. Digital strategy within schools, which is agenda item 5. And the purpose of this report is to highlight action taken by the local authority in supporting schools to deliver effective digital learning. And the report will also explain the partnership approach taken between the LA, schools, shared resources, or SRS, and Education Achievement Service, the EAS, to enable effective digital learning opportunities for pupils. May I welcome Andrew Powells, Director of Education, Andy Rothwell, Head of Learning and Achievement, Catherine Bevan Seymour, and Sarah Stevens from the SRS, and James Kent, Sean Powell from the EAS to the meeting. Welcome, officers. May I take this opportunity to thank members of the public for their comments regarding the report, which were appreciated by all members of the committee when formulating our questions for today. It's really pleasing there have some contribution from members of the public to the questions. Can I ask officers if they could provide members with a brief overview of the main points of the report? And I mean brief. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, members. I'm Andrew Howells, Director of Education. So, promoting the digital learning environments, one of the key objectives in our service plan within education. And this paper demonstrates the partnership working with EAS and SRS and also with schools. It also represents significant investment from both the Welsh Government and the local authority over the last few years, but also heading forward into the next 3 years. So Andy's going to give a bit of a context of how this paper and the strategy has been devised with partners, but I think if we could just first go around each of the members of the group and we'll just explain what our role is within EAS and SRS. So James, if we start with you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm James Kent, Assistant Director, with responsibility for all areas of the curriculum. So therefore, part of the umbrella would be digital support for schools as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Powell. I am the Associate Curriculum Partner for Digital Skills within the AS. My roles and responsibilities involve supporting schools across the primary, secondary sector with developing their digital skills, both with the staff and also with the pupils as well. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Kath Bevan-Seymour. I'm the Operations Director and the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the SRS, so responsible for the SLA and the service delivery.
Morning, my name's Sarah Stevens. I'm Head of Service Management at SRS with responsibility for supporting schools and corporate colleagues.
And Andy Rothwell, I am the local authority's Head of Learning and Achievement, and as part of my portfolio I also have the digital skills remit and digital strategy remit. So, do you want to just give the context? Yeah, sure. Okay, so taking on board, Chair, your comments about being extremely brief. As you're probably very aware, there has been an awful lot of work that's happened in the digital landscape, and I think Section 3 of the report explains that in a fairly articulate way. It's timelined, it explains events that have gone on at Welsh Government level, policy level, how that's been developed, how things have been developed at a curriculum level in schools. Equally alongside that, it explains how Welsh Government have invested funding and how that was accelerated through the COVID period when we were in a lockdown period, looking at blended learning and remote learning and, from a home point of view. And then it takes us forward into kind of where we are right now, and how the local authority has made a commitment to Welsh Government to create a sustainability funding pot of money which we're making available to schools. That links in then to our local authority-wide digital education strategy and how our key partners are going to be supporting us in delivering that strategy. It sets out 3 particular missions which are aligned to a Welsh Government policy area. The 3 missions are very simply to get good infrastructure and devices into schools and sustain that, which is where SRS come into play, to ensure that the professional development of staff and also the teaching and learning development, so the curriculum development in schools is effective. That's mission 2, and that falls under EAS remit. And then if you kind of like 1 and 2 added together make mission 3, which is we would like to develop, and we are going to develop, digitally effective students and pupils across Torfaen. The funding that is available to schools through the £1.5 million investment, which is brilliant from a Torfaen's point of view, will be a complement to school budgets. Schools will be able to access that funding and use it in a way that they see fit as budget holders and also curriculum developers of their own curriculums. Ultimately, what we're looking for today is feedback and your endorsement around what we're suggesting and proposing. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Any other comments from any other?
Actually, if I may just, in July, we had a visit from Welsh Government and Estyn to talk about all things digital in Torfaen, the developments that have happened in the last year. We were fortunate that colleagues from EAS and SRS joined us for that meeting as well. And as part of Appendix 2, you can see the PowerPoint presentation that we prepared and delivered to Welsh Government over the course of a day. It was a good, challenging session. We were able to respond to their questions. So, yeah, a useful session. I think it's a useful context for you to know that that's happened as well.
All right. So may I invite members to ask officers the questions as per the order in the pre-agenda meeting? There are some blanks and I've covered those off. So the first question, and you'll be pleased to know we've got 27 questions to start with. I don't have any supplementary, but the first question is relating to 3.5, and I think it's something for all of you to think about. Schools are responsible for ensuring that all pupils develop digital skills in a way that ensures progression and best meets the pupils' needs. So the question is, how confident are you in the processes that are in place in order to monitor pupils' digital skills progression?
Thank you very much. So we do a lot of work at the moment around supporting schools with their understanding of progression and assessment, not just within digital skills, across the whole of Curriculum for Wales. A lot of the work that I do is around supporting school leaders to understand what the digital competency framework is and how to apply that effectively across the curriculum in their schools. Digital competence as a cross-curricular skill is, as we know, highly important, and we're doing lots of work now through our professional learning programme to support schools around how they develop those skills. As an example, our most popular offer in terms of schools attending is the leadership programme, where digital leaders will attend a 4-day programme where they get to network with other schools across the local authority and within the region as well, to really unpick what it means to be a digital leader. As part of that programme, we spend a lot of time looking at curriculum provision and pedagogy, which sits as part of the digital professional learning journey, and we spend that time to really understand how we assess and monitor the development of children's digital skills. And the key element of that is really understanding what is being asked of those learners, looking at the technical language in the digital competency framework, and really unpicking what that means for that school and how that then we can create a pathway for those learners as they develop through school. One of the most important things that we're looking at now is developing the use of digital portfolios and e-portfolios through the use of the Hub platform. And this is a really positive way of being able to demonstrate learner progression using digital skills. So learners can essentially create a range of digital examples and evidence throughout their year in school, and they compile that all together then within an e-portfolio which they can monitor, they can comment on, they can reflect on their learning and demonstrate the key principles of progression as they move through the school. That's kind of a sort of brief overview of how we're sort of developing progression with digital, and I'm happy to add more if anyone needs any. Thank you.
So from an SRS perspective, we're very fortunate in that we have support across all of the schools in Torfaen. We do have some authorities where they find their SLA provision elsewhere. However, we don't have that situation in Torfaen, which means that we can develop the IT infrastructure for schools in a consistent manner, which means that staff who may move from school to school, pupils who may move from school to school, can experience the same infrastructures and systems. The work that we did with Welsh Government with the investment meant that the devices that were being rolled out across schools were also matched in terms of consistency, and we make sure that we're meeting all the relevant standards to make sure that learners are safe online, but also that they've got access to the resources that they need to access. So whilst we're kind of the platform to allow those digital skills to be developed, and quite often it's the bit that goes wrong and that can cause the most issues when things don't work. But when we get it right, we've got a really good sound platform for schools, and I think the feedback that we get from them on their provision of IT is really good to allow them then to build on the other things. So
yeah, just building really on the comments made by Sarah and Sean there. I think also one of the challenges that we've always faced with technology in schools, we get disruptions that come in. So over a number of years, we've seen, for example, iPads that arrived in schools, and they were the big new thing. So it was colleagues from EAS at the time helping to support schools to effectively use those. I think as we look towards progression in the future and what that looks like, I think one of the challenges that we face is, for example, AI has become a big thing in schools. will become a big thing in schools. How we support schools to effectively use artificial intelligence at a pupil level and also at teacher level. So I think, you know, I'm aware that you're already thinking about that and how that's going to look. So it's not just living in the here and now, it's about looking into the future at what's coming next, because technology does do that in education. It disrupts what we've already got going on. We've got to be quite agile in our approach.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
Apologies, my microphone was off. Question 2, Councillor Dunn.
What level of digital support training is currently being provided by the EAS across Torwine schools? Are all schools year groups and subject areas engaging with the EAS digital support?
Thank you for the question. So essentially, our professional learning offer, we offer support over three levels. So we have a universal offer that's offered to all schools across Torvine. We then have a targeted offer where we target specific schools around recommendations that may have come from sort of Eston inspections, and then we also have a bespoke offer then that we can sort of tailor to a school's needs. So we kind of offer that across the local authority. We also have then our school improvement partners who go into schools and work with the schools to identify any areas within schools that need support. And then that's when they will broker myself to go in and do that sort of one-to-one level with the school. In terms of engagement with the offer, we have good uptake from Torvine schools in terms of their engagement in our professional learning programmes. I know Andy's been really proactive and been able to sort of promote our offer to schools as well, which has been really, really positive. And in terms of the offer itself, we spent a lot of time this year ensuring that all stakeholders within school have an opportunity to develop the digital skills. So our programme, essentially around digital skills, has offered support to school leaders, to practitioners on the ground, essentially developing their use of digital in the classroom. And one of the most popular offers that we had over the past year was support for teaching assistants in school as well. So support staff are able to confidently work with learners to support their digital skill development. So we're really, I was really pleased with the offer that we've had and the uptake that we've had. Also this year, we are now offering out cluster level support for digital skills, and the Aberystwyth cluster, who I'm starting work with next week, are taking up that offer. And within that offer, the school will be looking at, again, every stakeholder within the school and across the cluster will engage in some form of professional learning. The school leaders and the digital leaders will work on developing a vision and strategy for their school and for their cluster. The teachers then will work within their progression steps across the schools to develop a shared understanding of digital skills and progression. And then the teaching assistants then will attend a whole day training day with myself and some of our partner schools to develop their skills and their confidence as well. So we feel that the offer is quite robust in terms of what it offers for schools in Torvine, and I'm really pleased that that's what we've got to. Thank you.
Did you say, are you rolling that cluster working out to all schools in Cwmbran as well?
Yeah, so it's been offered out to all schools within Torvine. At the moment, the Aberystwyth cluster are the only cluster that have engaged in the project. But as that develops, it's kind of in its infancy. So we're kind of doing like a proof of concept and to see how it develops at the time. But I would hope that over time that all clusters will engage. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just again to build on what Sean says, the offer, we're really pleased to see the offer this year. It was comprehensive, and we really like the cluster-based offer in particular, Curriculum for Wales, promoting cluster working. I know we've come to talk in attendance scrutiny sessions about the importance of cluster working, that learner pathway. So that's a welcome step. Just to add as well, Sean from an ES point of view, as well as Sarah from an SRS point of view, very visible in the head teachers steering group, which is chaired by Sue Roach from Gante Primary School. Sue's invited Sean to come along to head teacher meetings to promote and share what's on offer from a professional learning and development point of view. So Sean's been very visible within Torvine, promoting and supporting the digital agenda, which is very much welcomed.
Yes.
So in terms of a quality assurance role from the LA, we have a internally overview provided by EAS about engagement in professional learning. So that's a core agenda item in our partnership meetings. The next one will be in October. So as part of that, we'll look at which schools are engaging in which professional learning, not just digital, all aspects. And we do a bit of a cross-comparison against inspection outcomes and recommendations within reports. So just as Sean was saying, if something's been noted within an inspection report that schools should be focused on, we'll be checking that they are engaging in that work. And if they're not, then that's a follow-up conversation that's had.
Thank you. Our next question is question 3, Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. Regarding blended learning, what lessons did we learn from the online learning during COVID, and how can we build on these positives or use lessons learned to develop the strategy?
I'll start with that. It's a really good question. It's a really, really good question. Okay, so what lessons did we learn from blended learning? I'm going to invite certainly colleagues who are delivering it on the front line and supporting schools to develop that. I think one of the first things we learned was that professional learning for staff is critical, hence why we put it at mission, sort of our second mission within our strategy. To enable blended learning, you need to have teachers and staff who are feeling confident in how you go about delivering sessions where you are isolated away from the children or when there is a screen attachment, and actually how you go about pedagogically engaging children, how you go about using assessment for learning in particular to gauge how well children are progressing through that. So one of the key takeaways was the professional learning element for staff is really, really important. And it was, I think, a challenge during the initial phases of lockdown to ensure that happened, but we did it. You know, we faced that challenge, we overcame it. I think the second challenge around blended learning is, well, for me, would be, and again, it would be more around the infrastructure side of things, making sure that we've got effective and suitable infrastructure both at home for children to be able to access, but also within schools, so that that communication can happen between school and home. The third bit, and sort of the intermediary bit there, would be the platforms that we're using. Now, we're really fortunate in Wales. We've got what I would consider to be a world-leading platform in Hub that's provided to every child and teacher in Wales. There are a range of apps and tools there that ordinarily schools would have to pay quite a lot of money for, but we don't have to pay for that. Parents don't have to pay for it, schools don't have to pay for it. That's covered off in Hub. That was really, really important in enabling blended learning to happen effectively. And I think sort of linking the platform and the professional learning elements together, the sort of takeaway into our strategy has been, we've got to make sure that professional learning continues to happen in schools, and the offer that's coming through there is very strong. And linked to that is knowing as a profession how to use the tools that we've got effectively. And I think we're seeing, we've got good usage of the Hub platform in Torvine. We see a lot of, nearly all schools are using it very, very well. It's just then the next bit, which is talked about disruptions. We're going to see something new come along. AI's coming towards us. It's that kind of, right, well, how can we take the professional learning development and ensure that we're thinking about AI around that as well? I don't know if you want to come in there, James. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come in because I was doing the job that I'm currently doing at the time we went into the pandemic. So our staff had to move very quickly from very much an in-person model of delivery and support to largely online for quite a long period of time. So there was quite a lot happened to us. Well, firstly, the online doesn't replace the face-to-face. And that's absolutely crucial, isn't it? That human contact. So the schools who went to live learning, and I know there were challenges with that first, with learners online, where there was that social contact day to day. That was, I think, where they had the best outcomes and kind of rode the challenges most effectively. I think the second, and it relates to the strategy that we're talking about today, those schools that had the best kind of strategic approach to the use and deployment of technology and support for staff around professional learning set themselves up very quickly in terms of responding to those challenges, and others perhaps had to do quite a bit of work in the initial stages to get to that. So, you know, as Andy says, if there are other disruptions or, let's hope that doesn't happen again, but if it did, those that have got that strategy in place were able to respond more quickly. I think the thing that we learned quite quickly was about how, when we're trying to deliver training and support, we could do that at scale using digital technologies. On one occasion, we had 350 practitioners in a team session learning about digital skills. It was very challenging to manage that in terms of breakout rooms and the systems, but it could be done. So that gives us great flexibility in doing either a in-person, which is sometimes really important, but also having that blended approach, or sometimes digitally, and we can do some of our networks digitally too. That means that practitioners don't have to always come out of school to engage with things, which can give benefits to them as well. So I think we learned a huge amount about the way we deliver the service, but also how schools can respond to aspects of that as well. And actually, you know, as a service now, and as you do yourselves, we operate very much in a blended environment. So we had all of our partner schools last night, for example, with us online. We had 100 schools. Now, if we'd have tried to do that in person at a venue, there'd have been a huge amount of cost, a huge amount of transport, wouldn't there, and traffic and so on. So I think that flexibility has really made us think differently, strategically about our work. So a number of lessons learned there. Sure, anything to add?
Just to add to that as well, in terms of lessons learned, I think one of the key things that I think I took away, particularly I was in the classroom at the time, was that lots of our children were digitally savvy, so they were able to navigate a device, they were able to access online learning. They weren't necessarily digitally skilled, and they didn't have that ability to create or develop things using digital technologies. And I think this is why the digital education strategy is really, really important, because digital is changing, as Andy has already alluded to, that it's constantly on the move, and we need to keep up with that so that our children, when they leave school and go on to employment, have those skills available to them to be able to access work, but also to be able to access life. Because, you know, everything we do now is around a device, isn't it? You go on holiday, your phone, it's those abilities. So, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, can I just come in from a digital, from an IT perspective?
Thank you, sir.
Obviously, at the start of the pandemic, we saw staff develop quite quickly, but what we also saw was a lot of children who didn't have access to resources to be able to work at home. So we were really pleased that we were able to work with the authority and Welsh Government to resolve that situation by providing equipment, but that didn't come without challenge around how we did that, and also making sure that those learners still had access to internet and to make sure that there was a safe environment for them. So in terms of lessons learned, we have got practices in place and things that we are implementing to be able to more safely enable digital technologies at home. During the pandemic, that was pretty much done with kind of acceptable usage and guidance, but there's been a lot more education now around cyber resilience and how we implement things like internet access for pupils who are doing blended learning. So, you know, not without challenge, we kind of found that all the capacity that we had within the infrastructure was no longer being used, and everybody was using their own things. So, and quite often we were asked for support on some of that as well to try and enable them, because even though they're not systems that we can manage, we were keen to see those children learning just like their peers. So, you know, kind of slightly different context to the problem, but all kind of linking in nonetheless.
So, Williams, did you want to supplement on that?
Just clarification, when you're using the term, talk about the platform, are you talking about the hub? Right, that's what I wanted to know, thank you.
Next question is relating to 5.1, and Councillor Thomas, you're asking this one.
Were teachers, pupils and governing bodies consulted regarding the strategy, as well as the head teachers?
We would have used the Head Teacher Steering Group as the main platform for consultation. I'm not sure if through the Head Teacher Steering Group, if they then took it back to schools and went through their own consultation there.
Okay. Takes us to question 5, which is 6.1. I'll take this one. And will the level of funding from the LA be regularly monitored during the strategy's lifetime to ensure the 1.5 million is sufficient for all device and infrastructure updates that are required by schools? So we've got 1.5 million. Is it going to be enough?
So the 1.5 million represents what we're calling a mirror match of the investment that Welsh Government put into Torfaen. That was our commitment to Welsh Government as part of the ongoing sustainability. It's going to be released to schools in 3 waves, £500,000 over a 3-year period. And we're going to be asking schools, I think if you look in, as part of the appendix to the digital strategy, we've got the school commitments to the digital professional learning journey. So we're going to be asking schools to demonstrate that they're meeting those commitments in order to access the funding. Here's something really important about this strategy. We're thinking about sustainability. Now, we're thinking about environmental sustainability. We don't want devices sat in schools that aren't being used. We want to make sure that the schools have got a curriculum that is delivering digitally effective learners. That doesn't necessarily mean that we need one-to-one devices. That means that we need to think carefully, and that's what we're asking schools to do around this, is think carefully about their curriculum and the provision that they need to ensure that the funding is sustainable, and that also, I'm very passionate about this, that also that environmentally we're being sustainable. So we're not turning over devices and recycling equipment in and out of schools at a fast rate. So we're thinking very strongly about environmental sustainability and economic sustainability as part of this strategy, and we're asking schools to think about that as well. So it's not about having lots of devices, it's about having an effective curriculum that develops effective digital learners.
Thank you. The question also mentioned infrastructure. So, you know, we've got old schools, relatively new schools. So are we up to date with our infrastructure in all our schools?
So there is a Welsh Government digital standard that underpins all of the work that we currently do, and it's just as important for us to ensure that existing schools meet that requirement as well as new schools. As part of the SLA, schools do contribute to a centralised fund for refresh, so we have already got that factored in to make sure that we can, all of the servers that they use, any storage, the internet capacity, all of that is covered by the SLA contribution so that we can refresh that, and we do have a roadmap to allow us to plan in anything. So it avoids the need for us to go back to schools asking them for money to keep their infrastructure fresh. We can do that as part of the course, and it's already been built in. That's been in place now for a number of years and is working really well. So I think that just helps to keep schools current from the infrastructure that they use. However, at school level, that's where it links in with Andy. You know, one of the examples that we've got across schools is we're seeing them now using, for example, more Chromebooks. The Chromebook lifespan is a lot longer now. Google have done an awful lot of work with that over the last couple of years as well to make that lifespan longer for schools. So they're no longer looking at a 3-year refresh on a Chromebook. It's more like 7 or 8 years. So it's that kind of change that schools are seeing. Apple's slightly different because they're governed by different, the way that they run their technology. But what we've seen is schools are definitely heading towards the Chromebook routes. They're much more reliable. They're quicker for children to start them up and get working. So there's definitely been a shift, which it helps with the sustainability piece as well.
I just add one thing as well, sorry. With the infrastructure, in terms of ensuring that we're meeting the Welsh Government standards, we actually engaged Torfaen's internal audit team to come in and review the work that we did, and we came back with full assurance. So hopefully that assures you.
So a big overhaul of infrastructure occurred 2019-2020 across Torfaen, as it did across Welsh schools. There's a 10-year refresh on that, so we're looking at a warranty period of 10 years. So that takes us to 29-30. We're going to begin conversations now, and we're thinking now about what the funding mechanism is going to be to enable the refresh, the total refresh of infrastructure in schools in 29-30. So it's not about just living in the here and now, it's also thinking about where do we need to be and what do we need to be doing 10 years down the line to make sure that we're still able to have effective mission 1, infrastructure, mission 2 around professional learning. We're thinking all the time around the future and where we're going, not just living in the here and now.
This question links to this question, and it was actually posed by Vicky Haller, who's sent her apologies. I think she's on her way to New York, so lucky Vicky. But I'll ask it, and it states, with older buildings in mind, do all schools have sufficient cabling access to Wi-Fi, etc., and will there be a disparity in terms of funding required for the infrastructure? I think we're about repeating ourselves, but...
As part of the EdTech funding, as Andy referred to in 2019, our remit was to ensure that each school was on a par with each other. So we did have challenges around older schools, thicker walls, maybe rooms that weren't as sufficient, cabling that was older, and that piece of work was undertaken to replace not necessarily all of the cabling in schools, but certainly the key connectivity for things like Wi-Fi. We are seeing schools move away from physically plugging things into wireless capable devices to allow them to be more mobile in a school. So all of those things were considered and carried out as part of the funding. It did mean that some schools maybe had some more of that funding than other schools, but it allowed us to have that equity across each school to make sure each learner had received the same level.
Takes us to question 7, which is Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. Do schools collaborate in terms of using equipment or procuring devices in order to achieve efficiency savings? And if not, would this be something worth exploring within clusters, for example?
I think this would be a great opportunity to talk about the One Wales procurement.
Yes, so as part of the EdTech funding, what Welsh Government did was set up a procurement framework in conjunction with Caerphilly to allow us to purchase devices on a Wales level. So that procurement is refreshed every year, and we have access to a centralised price list, which does include economies of scale, extended warranties as well, which for some schools is really invaluable. So whereas we might go out and procure for schools on an individual basis, we may find that that device is slightly more expensive and we can only have maybe 3-year warranty. The national Welsh procurement that was set up with Welsh Government allows us to have a cheaper, better value device, still meeting the standards that we need it to meet, but maybe with a 5-year warranty. And we've got people who are doing that procurement process for us in Caerphilly as well. So again, we're not repeating that process around each authority. So I don't anticipate that ending anytime soon. I think that there is an appetite to continue to do that, to provide value of devices to schools, and we certainly encourage them to come through us for that pricing. Quite often there's a misconception that they can buy things cheaper elsewhere. We certainly encourage schools to come through the process so that we can kind of, help them with that. If they do find something, that's great, but at least they know that they've done it with their eyes open, as opposed to any nasty surprises that may occur later on.
So does that, that's a great answer, thank you. But does that mean then that there are some schools that are still doing their own thing and trying to find their own devices, or is that sort of dropped off?
I think less so now. I think that's been helped by the fact that the central budget that we had to provision schools from Welsh Government meant that we were kind of delivering them a certain type of device, and they've had opportunity to use that device. So that kind of line back to us now is much firmer than perhaps it was before. So definitely, I think it's helped. I'm not aware that schools are going off and doing so much of their own thing now. They tend to engage us quite a lot.
Next question is question 8, and I'll take it, and it's one for Andy, I think, but does the strategy have a role to play in terms of attendance and exclusions within schools via blended learning, and how is this monitored?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I'd like to think that when we talk about the Not in Miss Out campaign in Torfaen, that we're trying to promote the positive benefits of being in school, and I think helping children to have exciting, irresistible curriculum opportunities, around digital in particular, because it is exciting. I think that would have a direct, perhaps an indirect benefit in terms of attendance. Without question, I've got no doubt about that, but I don't have the evidence to back it up at this point. But we know that, with Welsh Government's latest curriculum document around belonging, we talk about there around, but the document talks about the importance of making sure that the curriculum is exciting so that children want to be in school. So there is that line now, and I think that will have a natural benefit on attendance. In terms of exclusions, that's interesting. It's probably not one that I've looked into in great detail, if I'm honest with you. I mean, yeah, there would be schools setting homework and work for children who have been excluded and using that option avenue through blended learning, through Google Classroom, through, again, the applications that are available through Hub. I'm not sure if you've got anything more that you want to add to that, Andrew.
Not particularly on the exclusions, but I just think in terms of unplanned closures, we don't have snow days anymore. We've had a few occasions where schools have had to close for unexpected reasons, and they've shifted to blended learning, whether it's just been a year group or a whole group. And that's new since COVID. That's made a significant difference for keeping learners engaged and on track. I think that's a really interesting conversation about exclusions. It's something we've started to explore. But like Andy, I couldn't put my heart on any specific data to provide you with at the moment. But I know there's at least one secondary school we've had conversations with the role of online learning for those who are just struggling to get into school, particularly those who have emotion-based school avoidance issues. How do we start to re-engage them? But it's new pieces of work rather than something I can provide strong evidence on.
I think we might have a recommendation.
Thank you. Absolutely. I think what...
I do apologise. I didn't put my mic on, and the people at home might not have heard my question. So my question is on all teachers regularly trained regarding digital skills, so it is cross-curricular, and are the skills assessed and monitored? My apologies, members at home.
Absolutely, thank you. So obviously I alluded to earlier the digital leadership programme, but the offer is a lot wider than that in terms of we offer support around how digital skills are developed and progressed through the Curriculum for Wales framework. So one of our offers this year is around essentially looking at Curriculum for Wales and looking at how we can plan for opportunities to develop digital skills in all areas of learning experience. Schools then are encouraged as part of the leadership programme to engage with regular professional learning in their own schools, whether that's led by the digital lead or whether that's led by ourselves or external partners. But we see it as vital in terms of developing teacher skills and pupil skills that is an offer that's kind of engaged with a lot throughout the year. Outside of our offer, we also, I suppose, direct schools to external organisations such as Technocamps, who are funded by Welsh Government to deliver training on coding skills and computational thinking skills. There's also Co-Club Wales. We've also got engagement from Interfilm and other organisations who are able to provide that digital skill development and training. So alongside our offer, we are also almost signposting schools to extra provision essentially to develop the digital skills. I don't know if you wanted to add anything there, James, or in terms of...
Do we do a skills audit? Is it monitored? That's what I was
of course, yeah. So as part of the work that we do as well, there is a sort of a mapping tool that we work with schools on. So it looks at the digital competency framework, and when schools are planning for Curriculum for Wales now, they are encouraged to engage in this mapping tool so that they can map opportunities to develop these skills progressively across their curriculum. So that's one way in terms of assessing the delivery of digital skills. In terms of assessing digital skills as part of a sort of, I don't know, like a levelling scheme or an old school kind of assessment, there isn't anything specific for that. It's more about the learner's journey and their application of those digital skills and how effective they are as a learner in terms of being able to use those digital skills and being able to paint that picture of how they can transfer those digital skills across a number of devices and a number of applications. I think one of the best examples would be if you're doing something like film and media and editing on a film, if you were to use it on an iPad and then go onto a different device and use a different application that you've never used before, you'd be able to transfer those skills from your previous knowledge of using one application to another. And for us, that would be a good way of demonstrating sort of learner effectiveness and that ability to transfer their learning as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just take members to page 22 of the document there. That's Appendix 1 of the digital strategy, which is in relation to school commitments. And these are the school commitments that schools will need to demonstrate in order to access the funding. If you look down the list there, one of them is ensuring digital professional learning opportunities to all practitioners are available. So we're going to be asking schools to demonstrate to us that those opportunities that Sean's talking about, that EAS are providing, that schools are interacting with those. We recognise that there are going to be some teachers who are very strong with digital skills already and feeling very, through their own professional learning, that outside of what's already being offered, who might not need the support and training that Sean's talking about. So this is about schools looking at what their own context is, what their own situation is, and then engaging where appropriate with the different elements. And that's why one of the important commitments there is around ensuring that digital professional learning opportunities are available for all practitioners.
The next question is question 10, and that's Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. Are pupils and parents surveyed regarding what equipment that they have at home and how often the pupils use it? And going on from there, are pupils with less access to digital equipment and Wi-Fi at home prioritised in terms of having access via school or encouraged to loan equipment from the school in order to improve their digital skills?
Just making a couple of notes there. Multi-layered question. In terms of a surveyed element, not at a local authority level, no, we wouldn't undertake that. But we would ask, that would be something that schools would ordinarily do at a school level, talking to their parents around a whole range of things as well as digital. So asking parents what access you might have to Wi-Fi, to technology at home, and then how schools might go about supporting that, drawing on expertise from SRS, as we mentioned around the blended learning when that came into play. So that's more of a school level activity that would take place rather than at a local authority EAS level. However, we would absolutely be there to support schools with that, and I think as part of the wider work that Sean does around digital leadership development at school level, it would consider that. So it's not just about what's going on in school, it will be helping schools think in their digital leadership programs around what are we doing to support those pupils outside of schools. I would extend that as well, as mentioned already, to talk about the Hub platform again, and just saying that that is universal and accessible for everybody, and it is free. Children are able to access that, pupils are able to access that from home. Parents can also see, I mean, as a parent myself, I'm able to log on and look at how well my daughter or son has got on with their national assessments every year, and we're encouraged to do that. So there is a universal offer in terms of provision of platform from Welsh Government.
Do you know that schools are doing that? Do we know that schools are definitely engaging with the parents and the children to survey what digital needs they've got?
Just go back to the start of the pandemic. So this was a core piece of work at the beginning about assessing which learners had access to devices or to internet at home. So we're not continuing to check that that's happening, but these were practices that were embedded right at the beginning. And Sarah's talked about provision of devices and so Wi-Fi devices that were issued to families via home. So that was an extensive piece of work that lasted for a number of years. I think the funding's only recently ceased on that, hasn't it? But those practices we would expect schools to have continued, and there were devices that were loaned out from schools right from the start of the pandemic. Additionally, I think back to a head teacher meeting we had last year where a private company came that could provide devices and Wi-Fi support to families. They came to speak to all Torvine head teachers. Again, this is a decision for individual schools. We would expect them to track the progression of the skills of their learners, and if the learners are not progressing, if they can't complete homework, that's something the schools would be aware of, and they would be expected to make adjustments for those learners. But it's not something we would track as a local authority level. Okay.
I think members were concerned with the cost of living at the moment, and obviously things have gone out the window if you can't afford things, and wireless would probably be the first thing that they wouldn't want to pay a monthly fee for. So it's about monitoring that, you know, it's all well and good to have the access in school, but when they've got to do homework or when they're out to school and that type of thing, and as you say, it's down to schools, but is there a mechanism that they can, parents can just contact the school? Sometimes parents don't wish to contact the school. So there's a knowledge out there that, you know, if they need help, they know where to go.
Just one thing to add, really, as we've talked about things that happened through the pandemic. I mean, I don't know. We do sometimes get requests from schools around access at home. Then there's not a lot of them, so I assume that that is being managed at school level. But during the pandemic, even though we provided we had the provision of equipment out to pupils, we also had Wi-Fi. Now, as Andy and Andrew have mentioned, that went on for some years and that was funded, but those dongles are available if schools did have learners who needed them. Obviously there's who picks up the cost of that, and I know in some schools and other authorities the school has picked up that cost to allow that learner to access things at home. So I guess you know, if schools did want to still progress those options, there are still things available that we can still issue out because they are still around. So you know, there's definitely ways and means to do these things if there are particular learners who are affected and can't get online.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know.
That takes us to question 11. And Councillor Best, this is your question, I believe.
Thank you. Is there any scope for schools to help improve the digital skills of parents or guardians? Because some parents don't have the digital skills to help their children, and some pupils would struggle with blended learning if their parents couldn't support them. And could this be extended to training around online safety and safeguarding, things like that?
Thank you, Councillor Best.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Best. Yeah, I think schools, I'm getting requests from schools around coming in to support families and parents with their digital skills. And it's definitely something that's on the radar of schools in order to be able to support their learners whilst they're at home. One of the things that we do recommend to schools is that on the Hub platform, there are a number of videos available for learners that can be accessed by parents as well to help develop their digital skills. So sort of like an asynchronous resource, so that when they're at home, if they're having any issues with accessing different platforms or knowing how to turn certain pieces of work in, there are online videos available to parents to be able to engage in that. The second part, in terms of the online safety question and developing parents' understanding of this is something I think is probably the most important part of the agenda in terms of digital skills of learners, is being able to access the internet online safely, online safety. Part of the Hub platform, which I always engage schools and encourage them to go and visit, is the Keeping Safe Online portal. And as part of that portal, there are a number of guides for parents around the safe use of digital technologies, and most specifically around sort of applications they'd have on their phone, so things like Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, and so on. And these are really comprehensive guides that are created for parents and are written so that parents can understand the risks of accessing certain applications, but also how to safeguard their children when they're online. So there's a specific section around parental tips on how you can sort of monitor accounts and those kinds of things. So for schools, we definitely encourage them to engage their parents with those materials. The other side of that as well is that schools are also encouraged to engage in the 360 Safe online audit tool, which is provided by South Wales Grid and is, again, promoted by Welsh Government. And this 360 Safe tool is essentially a self-evaluation audit of all of the school's online safety practices. Part of that is about engaging with parents and engaging with stakeholders of the school. So as they fill in that online safety audit, they will be kind of signposted to having to do that work with their parents as well.
Just building again on Sean's point around the online safety tool, it's a great tool. It's actually also part of the Section 175 safeguarding audits that we do as a local authority. So one of the key questions in the Section 175 audit is, are you engaged with the online safety tool? Are you using it? What is it telling you? So we get that feedback from schools as well.
Councillor Best?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I've just made a note. We talk about the hub in lots of instances in this committee. We've had training with the previous council, but I don't think councillors of this session has had any training in use of the hub, which might be useful to elected members and others, and maybe, you know, people will pick up on it. Yeah, Andy?
I think that's a really good idea. It's evolved, it's evolving continuously. I'm sure colleagues from EAS, I'm speaking on their behalf, but would welcome a members' briefing perhaps on the hub and latest updates. Perhaps we could look at that.
Brilliant. We'll put that as a recommendation. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and just to mention as well, one of the things that we've built as a local authority using some of the hub tools is something called a Storva, the store, and it's a repository that all schools in Torfaen can access for all of our local authority key documents, policies and frameworks. So that's built using some of the hub tools, and it's just a great simple way for schools to access materials that we're producing quickly.
And we're delivering a members seminar on Monday. I'm going to refer to that you'll have the access to that, so you can see all the documents and support that's within that repository.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Williams?
Can I just ask, probably this is a question for our EAS colleagues, training around the hub development, it may be there already, but I would think it would be really important for school governors to be brought up to scratch with that, because not the least so that we can effectively ask questions and challenge schools, you know, and support them. So is there training on that already that governors can access, or is there any plans for that? I'd certainly find it really useful.
As you are, we do have a PL programme off for governors. I'm not 100% certain if we have, but it's certainly an action I can take. That I can take back to Ed Price, who leads on governance for us as an organisation. It's something we can add into the professional learning programme, because that's something that, you know, Sean or I could facilitate. So I'd be more than happy to do that if it's not on offer currently.
I think we have an issue with continuity, because obviously councils change every 5 years, and you've got some old members that have gone through and know what it's, and then there are new ones that we talk about it and the acronyms and things, they haven't got a clue. So it's about continuity of that training. So I think that would probably be welcome. And the other one was data as well, the use of data. We did a huge bit of training on data, but I don't think the new members have had the opportunity. So yeah. So yeah.
Funny enough, Andy and I talked about that about 9 o'clock this morning, and then that's something we'll be inviting EAS to perhaps do a members seminar on the revised data processes, so you can do it.
Thank you. The next question is question 12, and Councillor Jones takes this one. Will you take the next one as well, please, Janet? Janet, will you take
Yes, of course.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. My question relates to pages 16 and 17. And the first question is, equipping people with digital skills they need and designing services around the user will also improve social cohesion, create a more healthy and equal society with well-connected communities, and contribute to a thriving Welsh language. How will the strategy contribute to a thriving Welsh language?
Thanks, Councillor. That's a good question as well. So one of the things that I think we're very much aware of is we've got, and we're trying to promote the Welsh language within Torfaen, and we see that the opportunities for schools to work across schools, as it were, across campuses, so bringing our Welsh medium schools together, using platforms like Teams in particular, where we can bring classes together and we can share the exposure of the Welsh language, but also outreach, so from Welsh medium schools linking in with our English medium schools where they're learning Welsh as a second language, opportunities there to develop and promote the Welsh language. It just seems like we talked about the scales of being able to bring multiple people together very quickly using platforms, hybrid platforms earlier, and it seems that that's exactly what this strategy is trying to do. It's trying to use technology to break down barriers around distance, to break down barriers around travel, to allow out the development of the Welsh language through, as I've said, virtual platforms like Teams, where we can get people talking, sharing, and developing the Welsh language.
Okay, so, and to give another illustration for that, some of the Welsh medium secondary schools in the region recently adjusted the times of their school day to exactly allow that, the digital learning to take place, or if actually individual learners are going to change sites during the day. So they're changing the structure of their school days to enable this, as well as the use of the online platforms.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just add as well that I think what technology would allow is where we don't have the skills in certain schools around language, and that could be for Welsh language or international languages, technology provides the opportunity to share across clusters, as we mentioned before. It's a big driver of the curriculum for Wales, in terms of that 3 to 16 continuum of learning to support progression in language skills. And we also know, one thing we do know is we don't necessarily have those schools in all schools across a cluster. So that opportunity to share through digital technologies can really support that agenda too. And we've seen really good example of that in a Torfaen cluster, where they've looked at the progression of Welsh skills and actually really trying to up that in terms of pupils' acquisition and their ability to speak the language. So I think it's got huge benefits to technology really supporting those strategies.
And just to add sort of as a final kind of piece in terms of developing Welsh language, what digital technologies allows is for learners to be really creative in their acquisition of language. So historically, where we'd be rehearsing language patterns, we'd probably do it with a partner in the classroom. And now with digital technologies and the ability to record yourself and edit film and be really creative with digital technologies, it gives a new kind of sort of angle to develop that language development on. So I think, when we're doing our work with schools and we're looking at cross-curricular application of digital skills, focusing on the development of the Welsh language is really important for us as well.
Okay, Janet?
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you, Chair.
Next question.
I'll go on to my second question. Are any devices leased by schools as an alternative to buy-in, particularly as a way to refresh devices on a regular cycle? If not, could this approach be beneficial?
I think with the investment that came from Welsh Government over the last couple of years, it has allowed schools to move away from some of the leasing contracts that they may have had. However, they are still available to schools if they wish to go down that avenue. There's also, I'm assuming it still exists, but we used to signpost schools to the capital bids process as well within the local authority, because sometimes leasing contracts can be quite expensive and you don't necessarily get good value for money. So we try and support schools when they're having those conversations as much as possible. I think as well, though, given that schools are using a lot of Chromebook devices and the longevity of those devices now is really mature, it's probably leaving schools in a position where they're making different decisions. So we certainly don't rule it out. We try and support schools as much as possible to make sure that what they're entering into is good value, definitely. But I think there are things have evolved. We're definitely not seeing as many leasing contracts as we used to.
That's good to know. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Janet. The next question is linked to the similar thing, and I'll take it. And it's how much equipment is recycled And is there a cost to schools for recycling equipment?
Do you want to answer that one? Or? We do have a disposal policy within the SRS, and as far as I know, it doesn't cost schools anything.
No.
The arrangements that we have currently, the equipment comes into us, and that equipment is recycled as much as possible. So there's very little now that is being disposed of. That's a recent contract that we've entered into to try and make sure that we're obviously watching our own carbon footprint. But there's no cost to schools for recycling that kit.
Just to add on to that one, if I may, we've also been working with the Information Security Officer for Torvine to make sure that obviously this contract disposes of things securely, but where possible, we can now, well, through the disposals company, we engage in a local company so they can sell these items at a lower cost then back into the community.
Okay. The next question is question 15, and I'll take it. Are devices used within schools that are a security risk due to their age, and as software updates are no longer pushed out to them? So it's some old pieces of equipment and security.
So we work with all schools around their equipment cycles and refreshes. Sometimes it's not a popular conversation to have with the school to let them know that that device is maybe no longer secure and that we do need to remove it from the network, but we do have to have those conversations to make sure that all learners are safe and that we're adhering to any of the security policies that we have. But also that is bringing it in line with the EdTech standards as well to make sure that we're adhering to those. Fortunately, at the moment, we don't have a huge issue with old redundant kit because of the investment, but the real key thing for us working with both the authority and schools is that we still have those refresh cycles and that we don't kind of, go back to where we once were, that we're always making sure that that equipment is up to date and building on the investment that's already been made, because not only is it ensuring that schools have got up-to-date equipment, it means that the confidence of those learners in that equipment also is retained. So yes, we do have those conversations, and sometimes those updates are driven by the suppliers as well. So people like Microsoft, Apple, if they're no longer pushing updates out to those devices, then we can't really justify keeping them on the network if they pose a risk.
Could I just add a point to that as well? So corporately, Torvine invested in something called a SOC-C, so it's a Security Operations Centre, and that included the entire of the education infrastructure as well. So if you can imagine kind of a wrap around the outside of your networks, any traffic that looks unusual is actually monitored externally by a third-party supplier, and they can let us know straight away then if there's an alert that we need to look at something downloading or something that they're not expecting to see. We've also got some software as well that allows us to remotely wipe or kill devices. So if we think there's something going on with a particular device, we can contain that to stop sort of the problems getting wider as well. So that's been implemented in the last 2 years.
Thanks. I mean, again, just on to page 22, the appendix for school commitments. The last one there, and just taking it back to what Sarah was talking about, we're asking schools to ensure that they've got a well-understood device and infrastructure sustainability plan to mitigate for what you've alluded to.
Okay, thank you. Question 16 is on page 17, and it's Councillor Watkins.
Could you expand on what PLASC is and how its funding works? And then also, what mechanisms are in place if a school requires more investment than they're entitled to based on their PLASC return?
So PLASC is the pupil count that takes place each year. So that's then a submission to Welsh Government. So a lot of funding comes out of the PLASC data. So, for example, pupil development grant funding, other aspects, it's the per learner funding that schools receive. So that's what it is.
Yeah, okay. So if a school needs more investment, so what, going back to that last commitment, we're asking schools to think now, what does your sustainability plan need to look like? This £1.5 million worth of funding, as great as it is just a complement to school budget, essentially, and schools need to think about their sustainability plan from a financial point of view and essentially forecast really for the infrastructure and devices that are going to need to be renewed as time goes through. So the funding combined with our own school budget should enable and should allow for device renewal linked to curriculum, infrastructure renewal as well, with a long-term view to where we're going in 2029-30 with the big overhaul of everything. That's how we're kind of taking the approach.
Okay, thank you.
I told you to ask the officers, not the chair.
Yeah. I did ask that question in our meeting yesterday, and everyone went, "You don't know what happened."
No, I actually answered as far as I could, but I said just wanted the officers to answer. So good, thank you. Thank you, Jane. Our next question is Councillor Williams on number 17.
You've partly answered this question. It's round about reaching our net zero target. And you already said quite a lot about that. But what I wanted to kind of understand a bit more, so with the net zero targets in mind, should the council be more definite in stating the necessity for schools in assessing their digital sustainability? And could this be evidenced? Could it be evidenced within their funding bids for equipment and infrastructure? I wanted to refer to the bit in the report where it talks about future generations and sustainability, because it gives a few examples, doesn't it? Particularly procuring devices that avoid built-in obsolescence and requiring contractors to consider their carbon neutrality. So are we confident that agenda is kind of like really being pushed? Because I can see that because schools also have autonomy, don't they, in their funding and in their choices. So I guess it's about making sure that that's quite clear on schools' agendas when they're applying for funding, the whole digital sustainability stroke net zero agenda.
If I come in first, and perhaps Sarah might want to follow up on some of the contractor elements and bits around that. I mean, the first bullet point around the future generations and sustainability talks about device ratios that's necessary for the delivery of the curriculum. And that's where we're really trying to say to schools, think about what type of digitally effective student that you're trying to develop first, rather than worrying about going off and getting lots and lots of devices. Start from curriculum, start from a pupil point of view, base it all around what we're trying to create here. So I think that's going to drive that agenda. We're getting schools to really focus in on the curriculum and the development of the pupil, not the device. The device is the bit that will enable that where appropriate. The last thing that we want are to have devices sat around in schools that aren't being used. They cost a lot of money, and we don't want them sat in schools. So we need to make sure the schools are really focusing in and thinking around that. That definitely supports a drive towards carbon neutrality. So I don't know if you wanted to mention some of these sort of contractor elements.
Sorry, so as part of the EdTech procurement exercise, I do think some of that is factored in, but I'm going to check it and double check, just for my own sanity really. But again, making sure that schools purchase from that framework so they have longevity for those devices is really, really key. You know, if they're tempted by cheaper devices that look too good to be true, but need to be disposed of in 2 years as opposed to the 5 or 6 years that we can achieve for them, that's a really key element to that. As I said, I don't think we have so much of that now, but it's definitely worth reinforcing those messages where we have that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. The outcomes of each of the 3 missions, how often will these be monitored and by who?
I'll start with that there. So in terms of how often that's going to be done on a yearly basis, there's a couple of sort of points that we're looking to. We're not looking to a single measure here in terms of determining. We need to look at several areas. So first is going to be the returns that we're getting from schools in terms of their commitments. Are schools showing in their commitments that things are moving forward and they're delivering and able to access funding? So that's probably going to be one interesting point to look towards. Absolutely. I mean, probably in the short term, we're looking towards ESTIN inspection reports. We know that they're going to be talking about digital skills and digitally effective learners, so that's going to be another thing. Are we seeing an improving number of schools perhaps not getting as many recommendations around digital skills and digital learning? I think probably another marker and another point of review, and it's going to be factored in as a standard item agenda, our head teacher steering group that meets 6 times across the course of the year, we're going to be talking about this on a regular basis there. And as part of that group, not only have we got head teachers, but as I mentioned earlier, we've got SRS and EAS there. So it's going to be a review process there. Naturally, because of the commitment that we've made as an authority, we're going to be reporting on it through our own internal mechanisms and cycles. So there'll be that review element. Then I think we've got to look at longer term. I think we've then got to start thinking about what's happening in terms of pupils in Torvine and their destinations. They're going on to work. What are they going on to work on? Then I think we've got to start thinking about, well, actually, how is the economy of Torvine developing? And, you know, we know that there's a link between work-based learning, digital skills. Are we seeing an increasing number of people in Torvine going into work in Torvine? Are they contributing to the economy and the development of Torvine? But that's a really long piece of work. So I think we're looking at sort of short, medium and much longer term measures there around sort of the effectiveness of the strategy and the funding. I don't know if there's any, Sean? Yeah.
I suppose from the AIS professional learning offer point of view, we monitor impact of our professional learning over a number of different points in the year. So originally, straight after any professional learning that we've offered, we have an immediate impact, so we call it IE1 evaluation form. We then send out a second evaluation form sort of 3 to 6 months later to gather information around the impact of that professional learning programme. And then a third one then goes out around 12 months later. So over those 12 months, then we can measure the impact of the professional learning that we've offered. On top of that, then Andy and I have got monthly meetings scheduled in. So any schools that I'm working with on sort of developing digital skills, I can update Andy with, and sort of conversely, then Andy can sort of say to me, I've spoken with this school and there's extra support needed there too. So we're kind of doing that monitoring together as we go through as well. So that's sort of an extra layer to the monitoring.
A couple of questions. Maybe we've answered or duplicated, but we'll take them anyway. And it's Councillor Jones on question 19.
Thank you, Chair. Are any schools assessing digital learning from organisations other than the EAS? If so, do you know why?
Thank you. Yes, there are schools accessing professional learning from external organisations. Where this is sort of happening is usually due to a specialised skill set. So, for example, Technocamps, who I mentioned earlier, who are funded by Welsh Government, are based within the University of South Wales and a number of universities across Wales. And they have specialists around computer programming and coding, which is quite a challenging skill for schools to develop. And within my role, I have a certain level of sort of programming and coding knowledge, but the Technocamps team are all specialists within that field. So they will engage with those to develop their pedagogy and their understanding of those areas of the curriculum on top of any offers that we have. So that there's one example. And there are other examples in terms of companies like Interfilm, who offer support around film and digital media. And again, it's just for schools sometimes having different experiences and making it more authentic and experiential in their learning is why they will engage with other organisations.
Just to add to that, I mean, there will be schools who will engage with perhaps other private sector training providers. Sometimes they've got a long-established relationship with people within those providers. Fundamentally, that's the school's choice, isn't it, in terms of who it wants to engage with. That will come at a cost, whereas the offer that we provide within the AS, we believe is comprehensive, provides all the sort of skill sets, and where we don't have the skill sets, for example, we will engage with external partners to support us on our behalf. But fundamentally, it will be about who schools want to engage with through their professional learning offer. But we do come at no cost.
Okay.
Chair, can I come in again, please?
Yes.
Are any of these schools in Torvine? Are we allowed to ask that question?
I think they are, yeah. You can ask, and the answer is yes.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. It takes us to question 20, which is on page 22, and it's Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. In order to access funding, schools must evidence that they are meeting their digital commitments. But schools need to evidence why upgrades are required before additional funding is granted. It is possible that some equipment could be bought when it isn't required. Oh, sorry. In order to access funding, schools must evidence that they are meeting their digital commitments. Well, schools need to evidence why upgrades are required before this additional funding is granted. Is it possible, therefore, that some equipment could be bought when it isn't needed?
I'll start with that. Thank you for the second time round. I'll start with that, and I think this is really important where the partnership between SRS and schools and the local authority comes in. So, as I think Sarah's already alluded to, there's an upgrade programme for schools that traffic lights when schools will need various infrastructure or devices being renewed. So it should be an informed decision by schools in terms of when they do it, which should mean that they're not buying or purchasing anything unnecessarily. Sarah, I don't know if there was...
Sorry, could I see the question? Because I was struggling to hear it. Thank you.
Sorry.
I think the important thing for us is making sure that schools don't invest when they don't need to, and they invest when they do, for sure. So from an infrastructure perspective and a device perspective in schools, those audits will be really important conversations with schools so that they know what needs to be refreshed and when. If schools were to come to us asking for specific equipment, then kind of in that role as, I suppose, it like a critical friend, really, kind of understanding a little bit more as to what they're trying to achieve to make sure that they don't make those decisions incorrectly, or maybe not necessarily incorrectly, but not with all of the information that they perhaps need. So I think as long as we can intercept those, you know, we're more than happy to have those conversations. Unfortunately, we do know that sometimes that doesn't happen. But certainly we're there to kind of help and support as much as possible to make sure that those things don't, you know, they're not investing in the wrong things at the wrong time, for sure.
Just to follow on from that, I think from our point of view, the conversations we have with schools is around the purpose of the device they're purchasing as well. So quite often new things come out and it seems all snazzy, but actually what purpose does that fit within the curriculum, and how is that going to develop digital skills? So we kind of supplement each other in terms of how we support schools with their purchasing.
Thank you.
Very much the same. I mean, absolutely, that the partnership between sort of device and infrastructure and curriculum and planning and pedagogy really important around purpose. But I think the introduction of this as part of the strategy, the idea of doing this should be that we're encouraging schools to engage with our key partners, to have those conversations, to think about curriculum development, to think about infrastructure development that is sustainable and meets the needs of the schools and doesn't fall out of remit. So, whole purpose of the strategy.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. So just I think culture that we're trying to establish is really important here. Torvine's a relatively small local authority. We've got really close relationships with the schools. So we're all readily available. So we wouldn't really expect anything to come in that we hadn't already discussed. And if there was something we didn't agree with, we would just pick up the phone and have a conversation with the head teachers to talk it through. I think that's one of the real advantages of being in Torvine, is there is that closeness. That's something we're really trying to build on. Okay.
Thank you for that. And we move on to Appendix 2, and question 21 is on referring to page 27. Was the EAS previously not part of the ICT steering group, and are they currently not involved in any other groups or forums that would benefit from their input?
So with Sean starting, as I was starting, yes, Sean joined then. I'm not sure, quite honestly, if EAS were part of the head steering group prior to that. I mean, just in terms of our meetings and partnership meetings, so in terms of dialogue between local authority and the EAS, Andrew's already alluded to partnership meetings that take place where we get an opportunity to discuss. I suppose things at a slightly more strategic level. But the one-to-one meetings that Sean and I are having on a regular basis allow another form of communication, and that's probably a little bit more operational, granular, to get under the nitty-gritty of a few bits and pieces. But there are other meetings. I mean, Sean organises a region-wide LA meeting, as well as, and that's attended by Welsh Government as well. Sean, I'm not sure if I'm underselling the organisational sort of settings that you've created, but there are good opportunities for dialogue that have existed, certainly since I've been in post.
Yeah, I think I'd just echo what Andrew was saying. I've been in post for sort of 12 months, and one of the key things I wanted to establish early on was those relationships and those conversations between myself and the local authority. So, yeah, obviously our one-to-one meetings, the ICT steering group, and then the region-wide sort of local authority meetings as well are the main communication channels in terms of sort of driving digital forward.
On top of that as well, Sean, I think I'm right in saying that you've got local authority-wide meetings for local authority staff, but you also run EAS-wide meetings for schools, network meetings for schools as well. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're confident enough that if you needed to be involved, you'd ask the necessary questions as well. So thanks. Question 22 is Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Will school budgets be impacted by an increase in SRS support? And can the SRS cope with any increased demand?
The SLA currently is kind of we work on that with Torfaen to make sure that we've got all of our costs covered. We do have some schools that have asked for additional support from us. So secondary schools, as an example, historically used to employ their own technicians, and more recently we've seen a number of secondary schools come to us for the support through ourselves. So that is funded directly from the school. But the benefits of doing that allows us to undertake things like training, HR types of issues, and we can. Some of the issues that we saw in schools, or schools certainly told us about, was that they don't often have the skills in school to manage the IT sides of things, maybe as effectively as they'd like to. So they kind of devolved that to us to do. Because we can have those strategy type meetings with schools, understand what those technicians are trying to relay or not relay to the schools, and kind of really like work together. There is no kind of one rule is better than the other. I think we're happy to work with either scenario, but we're certainly seeing a benefit in Torfaen schools where we have taken on the responsibility of the technician. We can provide them with a really good structured training. They have good line management, and they're allocated a team leader, and we keep in contact with the schools around the work planning, objectives that the school want them to achieve, and we measure all of those things. So in terms of increased costs, I think we are always very upfront with schools around what is involved in that. And like I said, we can work with both models. So if schools wanted to continue to employ their own technician, maybe at a cheaper cost, there may be risks associated with that, but we can support either. I think it's just about being open and transparent around what those arrangements are and what the costs are associated with it from the outset.
Thanks for that. Our next question is a point of clarification from Councillor Jane Watkins. Jane, question 23.
Thank you, Chair. On page 32 of the report, in the information given, can you just clarify where it says 90% of schools in Torfaen are engaged? Does that mean they're engaged with the hub, or are they engaged with other platforms?
Okay, that's a good question. So, let me start again. Thank you, Councillor. That's a good question. We actually highlighted this to Welsh Government because you might notice there that it says 32 schools, and in Torfaen we've got 32 schools plus approved, so it should be 33, hence why the circles around it. What it's actually showing is that we've got, because of that data discrepancy, we've got 100% of schools engaged, and it is to do with the hub platform. So it's all about the hub platform, that statistic, and we've got 100% of schools engaged in terms of its usage. That means, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but that means I think that there are more than 100 active engagements into hub per calendar month to count as an engagement, as it were, to count as an engaged school. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, it does. I think the confusion arose for us because it's entitled, how many schools do you have that choose to use other platforms? And then the information was Torfaen, let's say 100%, then 97%. So those two sentences, we weren't quite sure
Got you.
which way to read it. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah.
I think, just to clarify on that one, we did a bit of work before the digital remit around trying to decipher the sort of engagement in Hub, but also, if Hub is the main platform, what other platforms are being used to supplement that? Because there are other things schools can use. We, as an organisation, sort of promote a Hub-first approach, but we understand that schools do use some other tools as part of their learning, and it might be that they're using something, as an example, I think of as a platform called Mathletics, which is essentially an online maths platform where learners go in and practice their math skills. That doesn't sit within the Hub platform. So that's, I think, the sort of the question there was about, we were trying to find out what other platforms are being used on top of Hub. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just flick to page 33, the second main bullet point, the sub-bullet point 4 there, talks about most schools using Hub it alongside other applications, and as Sean's just alluded to, there's a Purple Mash, Class Dojo, Padlet, Seesaw, so other applications outside of Hub. But we're really pleased, Torfaen's engagement with Hub is really positive. We're really pleased with that, given that it's the conduit through which really all Welsh Government education traffic goes, be that around teaching and learning, policy development. It's great that schools are engaged in using it. Just emphasise again, it's free. You know, it's when we talk about cost savings that schools can make, a quick win is to use Hub.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are tending to duplicate now. So, Councillor Williams, your question is question 24.
Sorry. You've pretty much answered that question because it's very clear what the rationale is for migrating to Hub. I guess it's more about, is there more that, what more can be done to support schools to engage more with the Hub? But I guess my question is also understanding that whilst Hub First is the best choice, is a choice of work to, it's also acknowledging that schools' autonomy, some of them do find more the different platforms more accessible, and just sort of having a bit of understanding of how you, because it's a bit of a balance, isn't it? You know, between the autonomy of schools to know what's best for their pupils and the kind of more sort of overarching use of the Hub. So it's just about kind of understanding your working of that balance. Does that make sense?
I'll start. I think probably Sean's going to come in here as the expert in the field. You're absolutely right. So again, for me, it goes back to what are we actually trying to deliver to our children in the classroom? And once we've got that pinned down, then we can start to think about the best tools to do it. Now, we believe, we know, in fact, that Hub provides most of those tools. However, it is within the gift of schools to decide if perhaps they want to do something that might be outside of Hub provision. They're more than entitled to do that. But we would always promote, go to Hub First when you're thinking about curriculum development and how you wanted to deliver a particular digital skill, or if you're looking at some form of remote working, get that plan very clear, set that out, and then try and find the right tool. You're probably going to find it in Hub, but if you can't, then we can advise elsewhere. Sean?
Thank you. Yeah, I think to echo that, we like I said, we encourage that Hub-first approach, and I think we are very lucky in Wales. I don't think there's a platform anywhere else in the world that provides a plethora of applications to schools that the Hub platform does. There are some gaps. However, Welsh Government and the Hub team are really receptive to having conversations about adding things to the Hub platform as part of the single sign-on service. And I think the key thing about the Hub platform for schools is it's safe and it's secure, and we know that. So any sort of professional learning that we work with schools on is all around the use of the Hub platform and showing them how to utilise the Hub platform to its maximum sort of capacity. So yeah.
Can I just add a little bit to that? Because we're quite often engaged in some of those conversations with the local authorities around what tools would schools benefit from, what are they using. So they're obviously gathering that intelligence to see whether there are opportunities to add additional tools to the platform that schools might be using, but at reduced cost. So that's an ongoing process as far as I can see.
The next question is 25, and that's Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Most schools have built the application of digital skills into their schools' monitoring, evaluation and review (MER) cycle. Are all schools being encouraged to do this? And do you anticipate that all will in due course?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think we are encouraging all schools to include digital skills as part of their monitoring and evaluation. In some schools, it may not be specifically labelled as digital skills. It might be labelled as cross-curricular skills, which would incorporate literacy and numeracy as well. But I think the schools now are starting to see, I think historically digital was always kind of the poorer sibling in terms of its application across the curriculum. Schools are now starting to see the importance of developing digital skills, particularly after the pandemic. So yeah, we are encouraging schools to ensure it's part of their monitoring cycles.
Thank you, Chair.
Just linking and building on that as well. I mean, it's part of Eston's inspection framework as well, so they will look at how well the schools are delivering digital skills. So therefore, we would expect schools to be monitoring effectively the use of digital skills and that development thereof.
Thanks. Question 26, Councillor Best.
Okay. Will the strategy be delivered equally across all Torvine schools? Will there be any impact, including licensing commitments, for example, in delivering to, say, Welsh medium schools?
Thanks. I didn't quite catch the end of the second part of that question, but in terms of the first bit, yes, it will be delivered equally to all schools, and in terms of transparency, when the funding is made available, we are going to make sure that every school is aware of how much funding every other school has got from a transparency point of view.
I think yesterday we had
Second part of the question was referring to Welsh medium schools, whether there be any discrepancy in delivering for them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. That's a really interesting question. So one of the key people that we consulted as part of the development of the strategy was the head teacher of a school called Mark Jones, who actually has been seconded to Welsh Government over a 2-year period to help develop something that's referred to in the strategy called the Digital Professional Learning Journey, DPLJ, which is where the school commitments have come from. So he was a lead on that. So he had quite an active voice in helping us develop and feedback in terms of our digital strategy. And I think the fact that he's a head teacher from a Welsh medium secondary school would reflect that this is a strategy for all Torvine schools.
3 to 18.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 3 to 18 schools. So this really is a strategy for all schools. And I feel that his kind of support around that has been really, really helpful.
We actually had a conversation on whether or not Welsh medium schools have to pay a different licensing fee for their digital.
So, I mean, through Hub, again, because Hub being what it is, it has to provide everything bilingually. There's no cost to Hub for schools. There is no cost there either.
Takes us to our final question, unless there's any supplementary from any members. And it's Councillor Thomas asking this question.
Thank you, Chair. Is training offered to school staff in terms of building school websites and using methods of communication? Would a corporate template or cluster work be beneficial and cost-effective in that area?
This discussion was about different school websites and how well they are and how not so good they are.
And the costs.
Just in terms of cost, to start with, again, through Hub, every school's got the ability to build a website for free using Google Sites, which is freely available to all schools through Hubs. We've also got a number of clusters where cluster websites have been developed for parents to access. Again, it's free because it's through Hub. Sean, as part of the AS role there in helping with the development of digital skills, do you want to just come in on what's available in terms of that development?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Andy was saying there, the Google Sites platform available through Hub is a really easy tool for schools to navigate, and it's easy to manage. Historically, I suppose, if you're going externally for websites, there's lots of hoops to jump through and different platforms to be able to use. I think the one barrier at the moment to schools using Google Sites widely is the ability to have a unique URL for the website, because it's not as easy as just saying thisschool.co.uk. It's got all the Hub bits. So there's a conversation afoot with the Hub team at the moment, because you can have that removed so schools can have their own specific URL. So if that becomes readily available, I think that would be something schools would be encouraged to engage in, because there'll be a huge saving in terms of cost on school websites there.
I mean, just in terms of corporate templates and that sort of thing, I don't think we probably go down that route. You know, it's for schools to manage their own websites. What I would say is there is an accessibility requirement on everybody to make sure that websites are accessible. But there's actually no requirement for schools to have a website in the first place. So it's very much around what a school wants to do and how is it meeting the needs of parents and its community.
With that, I think there is an accessibility issue there that we might have to take a look at. So that concludes our questions for this morning's meeting. Thank you very much for, you know, answering all those. Right, we tend to get more and more as the meetings go on. We're a nosy lot in this committee, so I'd like to thank officers for their time and contributions, and if they'd like to leave the meeting, feel free. I know you've got lots of work to do, and then members can formulate their recommendations. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're at the point in the agenda where I ask members to formulate their recommendations. I think we picked up a few. Geraint, do you want to run through?
I just want to hand those to members first.
Okay.
Come in after that if you like to.
Members, can I please remind you that the meeting is in formal proceedings and still being webcast. So members have been asked this morning to endorse the digital education strategy for Torfaen County Borough Council, assess whether the actions being taken are appropriate in developing digitally effective pupils, and make comments and recommendations to the executive member where appropriate. Do members have any specific recommendations that they would like to make regarding the report? Thank you.
It's not really a recommendation, Chair, just a comment. I think we seem to have evidence of good working relationships between the AS, SRS and Torfaen, so I think that's a good starting point.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I think it did, you know, they looked really joined up and on the ball. I think I asked Rick's question 8 with does the strategy have a role to play in terms of attendance exclusions? I think there may be a recommendations on the exclusion, actually, you know, recommending that they actually look at formulating some evidence so that we can ask the question at a later date. And so, are you happy with that one? Mm-hmm. I just picked that one up. It's, I think Andy was saying, you know, they haven't got actually any evidence at the moment of how exclusions actually utilise the digital strategy. Anything else? Anybody else? Lucy, yeah?
A couple of things. I think it might be, as a recommendation, simply to look further down the line at the monitoring of the 3 missions, especially the more longer term one. if that could that be a specific recommendation? Because I think it's good to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
The other one, I don't know if we can make it into a recommendation. I think it'd be quite important to see how training for parents in terms of digital sort of safety, but also training for governors on the hub, is that being implemented? Because I seriously think that governors have got an important role to play in this, but if we don't understand what the hub is and how it works and what it offers, we're not in a position to support schools to kind of migrate towards the hub.
That up. And maybe we can link the recommendation, because I've got the question on whether or not Wi-Fi is available at home, etc. And Sarah did say that dongles were available, so I think we need some comms about, you know, just ask the school or remind head teachers that you know, to that these are available if asked for. So the whole thing about family support, the hub platform and dongles, I think could be a recommendation. Yeah. Okay.
Similar to that, Chair, we're obviously Councillor Williams just brought up training for parents and governors with the hub, and we wanted to wrap the stuff around the dongles into that. You also wanted training for counsellors. Did you want that as a separate recommendation? Keep that separate.
I think that needs, because family and support from schools is one thing, but I think we need training as elected members, and maybe we could include the governors in that training. There's lots of members who are governors anyway.
With just to clarify, obviously for the recommendation, were you thinking training for yourselves as the committee who obviously heavily look into this more, or were you thinking training for all members?
If I remember rightly, when I was a governor, we had training within each governing body. Each governing body put on when the hub was new, how to use it. You have to have an email address to access the hub, etc. But I think this council hasn't had that training, so we talk about the hub, we talk about PLAS, but we're not aware of, you know, what they are. So the hub, I think, for this committee, but if obviously the members seminar can come out of this committee to invite all other members and school governors that need to need to have an update.
Just trying to clarify a bit. So you're talking about, so with the hub training, it would be more specifically relevant to governors, whether they're councillors or not, simply so they can be more effective in their challenge and their support. But I think in terms of all the council, it would be, could we do that more as a seminar?
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Rather than specific, there's a difference between training and a seminar, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I would want, as one of our recommendations, the scrutiny committee to ensure that the EAS have actually instigated training for governors on the hub.
Yes.
Separate to that is a seminar, which is more simple information giving for all councillors on exactly what the hub is and the rationale behind sort of supporting schools to use the hub. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, Jane.
Thank you. So, can I just clarify, do we know, is any of the members on this committee not governors?
Yeah.
Right. So, do we then want a different level of training for the committee members? Because so some people like yourself are not going to get the same level of training as we would get as governors, because you're not governor. So, do we want a seminar for members, but actual training for this committee and training for governors?
Committee members, surely, would it not be possible if once the EAS has set up training for governors, would there be no reason at all why scrutiny committee members who aren't governors could join it? Because there's not that many people. Just a thought.
Well, the thing that, sorry, that doesn't affect me, so I can't get, like, I can say whether I think that's a good idea or not, but I think people who it affects need to maybe answer that question.
Yeah. My point was that some older members had training when they were governors, or whether they were on this committee when the hub became new. We were all informed about it. We were given email addresses, etc., etc. But new councillors are not aware of the hub. New governors might not be aware of that hub. They might have just fitted in with their governing body. We've got a new governing body setting up now, and there'll be a new set of governors there that some may have the opportunity of knowing about the hub and some not. So I think the one recommendation is that the EAS pick up the training, because we also mentioned data. So we pick up the training of training on the hub and data for newly elected members, and that this committee needs to know what it's talking about, because we have the hub mentioned. And, you know, you just think, oh, well, it's a hub. What does the hub do? Because you can do so many things with it. So, sorry, somebody trying to get through? Janet.
Me after. I'm just listening to you. Two queries, possible recommendations. That schools be encouraged to do the MER within their policies, which he said some schools are doing, but not all.
Yes, yeah.
And secondly, could we be updated on of the question that I read out about the impact of the cohesion with the Welsh language? He said, oh, well, he hopes to do this, but surely we've got Welsh medium schools and Welsh junior and primary schools. Should we not be kept updated on the progress that the digital system is having on these schools and the integration with other schools?
The recommendation is just to keep this committee updated, is it, Janet?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I think we'll sort the other one out. Come on, Jane.
Apologies, but I'm still not clear where we are with HEB.
Yeah.
Even though you just gave a very lengthy explanation, I'm still not clear what our recommendation is, because you seem to say that this committee needs to understand it more, which I completely agree with, but you didn't say, therefore, we need training on it.
Yeah. I don't think this committee needs training on it. We need to understand it. We need to know what can be accessed on it. I don't think we need, and that can be done with a demonstration in the chamber on the board. I think governors, and I think the recommendation is for the EAS to include it in their recommendations to go on to their governor training for training on the hub and data. Okay? So the recommendation we're making is for the EAS to add the hub training and data training into their governor support training. But I think the committee can also be included in the member seminar, so we don't need two lots. The member seminar can run on the use of the hub, what it entails and what is available on it, and all members can join that. And if governors want to join us for that, they can as well. So, are we happy with that?
And we're happy that Vicky will be picked up in that as a governor, because she obviously won't be able to attend the member seminar.
Yes.
But because she's a governor, she'll be picked up that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, obviously, all members could be, invited to the seminar, and that's not the end of the road then, is there? So no. if members feel that following the seminar, yes, they've got an overview, but they might need something more in depth, I'm sure there are channels we can then go after that. It's not a brick wall, is it? So we can.
Yeah. Well done, Gary. Thank you. Okay. Any further recommendations?
Just a question, Chair.
Yeah.
I didn't hear clearly what PLASC stood for. Could we have that reiterated, please? I know it's probably a little bit past it, but my laptop and sound was breaking up, so I didn't hear the full explanation of what PLASC was. So can we, if you can sort of get that through, not as a recommendation, just for information, please.
I'm sure Garen can include it in the minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think the monitoring of each of the missions, Councillor Williams, did you pick that one up? Yeah, we have.
I just wonder, we've said about monitoring of the three, the outcomes of the three monitoring the outcomes of the three missions. In terms of the recommendation, is that monitoring them to come back to this committee, or how exactly are we thinking of wording that recommendation?
I would think come back to this committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So monitoring of the outcomes of the three missions and reporting back to this committee when appropriate, is it?
Yes.
How long does this digital strategy work? What's the lifetime? He was talking about 29, wasn't he?
That was something slightly different. That was he was talking 2029 to 30. There was going to be a big job in terms of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
But this actual strategy, it does say in the report, isn't it over the next 3 financial years, isn't
Right,
it? This funding.
So just an annual report, annual monitoring report, I think.
Yes, I mean, it could be just included in their next report. Well, maybe not the next report, but, in about a year's time.
Yeah. Can go into next year's basket.
Yes, that's right, stick it in next year's basket.
The only other one I picked up on was on question 27, which was the school-specific URL, the URL, the actual logging in. If we can make a recommendation on that, because they are looking at it, aren't they? So if this committee can recommend that they look at a school-specific URL, then that might be useful to help the officers.
I was just thinking wording-wise, obviously, because they said they were already. The explanation wasn't it, that quite a clunky sort of URL is currently in place, and it's to sort of explore, reducing that barrier basically.
And it reduces the finance as well. He mentioned, didn't he? So that could come from a recommendation from that question 27.
I'm just wondering on that whether there could be more emphasis on sort of cluster collaboration.
Yeah.
With the websites and web pages, whether there could be more links into clusters. And he didn't really answer my question on communications, did he? I was thinking of communications between primary schools and the college maybe, and how that sort of linked in. But
we did pick this up yesterday, didn't we, on the cluster work with the websites and having the links to with transition and things.
In terms of the actual website themselves and the design, it sounds like it's already above and beyond that, isn't it? The platform they've got is is for everyone to use. So not necessarily, they don't need to work in their clusters in terms of designing and helping each other out on layouts and everything to do with the website. But definitely, obviously, about reducing this barrier around the URL. If that's all that's stopping schools from doing that, like you said, is cost effective, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. We happy with that one? Okay. Over to you, Geraint. Anything?
To be honest, I think that's mainly what I picked up and more, to be honest. I'll just quickly go through to make sure. No, I think everything I've got down as a possible recommendation you've covered, and obviously a couple more as well, Chair.
And that looks as if we've completed the recommendations. Are we happy with those? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Take me back to my blurb a minute. Whatever it is. There we go. So, thank you, members. The next agenda item is the date of the next meeting. And the date of the next meeting will be on the 4th of October 2023, as agreed. At June's visioning session, members will consider the Welsh Education Strategic Plan, or the WES for short. And as chair of this committee, may I thank members and officers for their ongoing support, and a special thanks to Geraint, who's performed perfectly today.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jade, and thank you, Chris. Thank you. Bye. I close the meeting.